We are in the aftermath of a most horrific and unprecedented terror attack that has happened in Pahalgam in Kashmir. As many of you will know, we recently did the first edition of Terror Talk, where we looked into the impact that these kinds of ghastly acts have on the victims, of families, on families. And we felt that it was equally critical to also delve into the psychology of the perpetrators, of the terrorists themselves, and try to at least understand their motivations and their mindsets. So, this is a very special edition of Talk Therapy that we're calling Terror Talk, brought to you by Driveway Devi. I'm Karthik on behalf of Driveway Devi. And we had the brilliant Kushi joining us last time. And today we have an equally brilliant Yashasvi, who's also a psychologist, joining us to talk to us about this facet of terror. At the cost of adding a little bit of humor to this very serious topic, do not be fooled by her stunning good looks. Behind and beneath that is a brilliant mind and lots of knowledge and understanding. And that is what we hope to gain from this interaction. So, Yashasvi, I know that you are
Hello, sir.
incredibly busy. Thank you very much in the midst of your chaotic life for making time for this.
It's an honor, sir, always.
I know that you very sweetly sent me points instead of it being the other way around. But rather than shoehorning you into those points right at the beginning, let me just begin by asking you, help us understand a little bit in terms of the mindset of a typical terrorist, if at all it can even be generalized. And I'm asking this also in terms of, I know, and I think a lot of people know that there's a certain amount of consistent brainwashing, etc., that goes on with these kinds of people. But I still find it absolutely amazing that there'd be an individual who would enter, cause so much death and destruction. So, what about things like guilt and other facets that you and I, quote unquote, normal, regular human beings feel? Try and sort of make sense of this.
Okay. Okay. So, first of all, thank you so much for having me today. It's a very controversial topic, and I hope I give thoda bahut justice to this. So, I think the term of terrorism, in a very generic, if we talk about a generic definition of terrorism, it's basically the use of threat or violence against civilians or non-combatants just to achieve these objectives, which can be political, religious, or ideological. But I think there is more to that. For example, it's not just an act of violence, but it's more a strategic communication.
Hmm.
You know, it's not just a crime or an ideology. It's a social disease which is deep rooted in broken systems, or say unresolved conflicts, or weaponized narratives in the society. So I think that these things are very deep rooted, even though when we talk about I think generally there is this misconception, I would say, that a terrorist is having a false mindset or something. But there is no technical research which says that. According to many researchers, there is no significant relationship between a mental health issue with the terrorism behavior itself. For example, when we talk about the 26/11 uh, uh, tragedy which happened at the Taj Hotel. The incident took place. There were two, I guess, two or three. There were young attackers, but they were mentally very fine. When they got in the psychological interventions, they were very apt on the psychological interventions. But the cost was to cause a systematic manipulation which they have brought with them. from their country or from their society which they belong to, from their extremist group where they belong to. I still remember there was this documentary which, kept the this lie detector test. The attacker kept saying that I had to do this. It's what I'm born to do, you
Hmm.
know. So that says a lot about how uh, it's not very much related to mental disorders in particular, but there are a lot of socio-cultural impact on these things.
Okay, I'm going to quickly jump in here. मुझे एक दो चीजें क्लैरिफाई करनी है और ये भी पूछना है if I'm understanding you correctly. काफी बार if I and I'm talking purely from a layman's perspective, उससे ज्यादा मुझे पता ही नहीं है. हमें ये सुनने में, पढ़ने में और देखने में आता है कि एक तरह की इनजस्टिस या एक तरह का रॉन्ग डूइंग जो एक क्रिटिकल मास ऑफ पीपल के साथ हुआ है हिस्टोरिकली,
Hmm,
उस चीज को बहुत सारे टेररिस्ट ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस और उनके लीडर्स ऐसा दर्शाते हैं that this entire thing that we are trying to do, this movement or this revolution, is in response to right those wrongs that were done to us and to our people historically. And so, therefore, I can understand that technically speaking, these people may not show any red flags on assessments and testing for specific conditions, but एक for the sake of argument and an intellectual discussion, एक तरह से जिस प्रकार से वो लोग उस उन इवेंट्स को इंटरप्रेट करते हैं और जो उनका सोल्यूशन है, which of course is terrorism, which at all levels is extremely wrong, is almost therefore like a negative coping mechanism.
definitely, definitely. I agree with you.
Hmm.
I mean, the fact that the problem here is to understand that these people are not mentally ill. They're not born fanatics, but they're pretty much educated. They have very rational mind. They're strategic at the same time. For example, the biggest example can be Osama bin Laden himself. He was a student in Oxford University.
Yeah.
So he got in contact with this rationalism group where he started this community work, which led him to create this organization, Al Qaeda. So, of course, these people are very well educated. There is no line of poverty. They're well earned. Everything is fine. But the motivation behind these terrors are multi-layered. It can be a personal trauma, injustice, say political grievance, revenge, ideological manipulation around themselves. There are a lot of things. For example, I read this research where this author gave three psychological needs
Hmm.
that a terrorist has to fulfill. It's called quest of significance. The three needs are need for significance, need for belonging, and need for certainty. So I think it's very cleanly
Hmm.
signified platforms themselves.
एक चीज ये भी मैं कहना चाहूंगा that mm, I completely agree with you. We have countless examples of extremely well educated intellectual individuals who've been in this realm. पर अगर वो एक ना एक तरह से what I'm trying to say is that these are very smart people, even if they haven't been to the Harvards and the Ivy Leagues of the world. The fact that they are able to, for example, for years and years, evade being caught and detected, all of that requires a lot of street smartness. So, in one way or another, they are very, very highly intelligent.
Definitely.
uh, मुझे ये भी समझना है that we all know and understand that all these organizations rely heavily on enrollment and indoctrination. They need to constantly recruit more and more and younger people and turn them or flip them.
Definitely. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about हाउ दिस हैपन्स, मेरा मतलब ये नहीं है कि मुझे प्रोसेस बताओ, मे बी यू डोंट नो दैट, बट माई व्हाट आई मीन टू आस्क यू इज दैट what is the disposition of an individual who gets brainwashed and turned and flipped and convinced to make such a radical shift in their lives and join a movement like this?
Definitely. I mean that's a very subjective question itself because I would say, brain is an ancient organ. It's very easy to be manipulative with. And when we talk about the targeted audience of these terror attacks, people turning into terrorists, these are mostly young adults because as we grow during the time of adolescence, there comes the phase where our cognition is still developing, it comes with my environment as well. And if a person himself is born in a family which is which belongs to this extremist community, so of course that child is born with these quality himself, you know. So I think it doesn't make very rational or irrational sense to them. It is what it is for them. It is what they are born to do according to them. So I don't think there is gray area to that. It's always black and white. You do it for us or you die. It works like that.
Hmm.
There are these moral absolutism very much attached with them. There is this need to belong. So yeah, which is, shaped very socio-culturally and politically as well.
um, there is this, okay, so this is a theme that over many, many years and decades and generations, literature has explored, philosophy has explored, and I find it personally very interesting. And the theme I'm referring to is the often perceived extremely thin line. I would go so far as to say two sides of the same coin, where an extremely similar individual, by virtue of the side that he picks, whether to be on the side of the law or whether to be on the side of the unlawful activity, but in
Hmm.
the nature of the work that he is doing and executing being very similar, is either seen as a hero or as a terrorist. So, of what I'm talking about is oftentimes, people like spies. And when we say we have, governments have assets in various countries, and they execute these terrorists, and they go and do this, and they also kill people, etc. I want you to comment on how similar or different fundamentally are these kinds of people. I mean, one school of thought is that the fact that they have a certain rationality to at least be able to discern good versus evil makes them very different. But then, because in execution they are doing such similar stuff, it makes them very similar.
Yeah, I mean, that does make sense. But at the same time, when we talk about the developmental stages of an individual, uh, we as a viewer know that it's a hero or it's a villain. But for them, they are always a hero. A villain will always think that I'm a hero. I'm doing it for good. So when we talk about the terrorist community or say an individual who's turning into a terrorist, the mindset is not to burn. The mindset is never wrong. The mindset is to build. They are manipulated with the fact that you are building this. You are creating an impact in our society. So, of course, there are a lot of brainwashing going on here, but the brainwashing which is happening is not negatively portrayed to them. It's very, very positively, deep rootedly portrayed to
Hmm.
them. So
Hmm.
I don't think there is this there ever comes a rationality with them where they have to choose between these.
That makes perfect sense because I was listening to an interview of Nawazuddin Siddiqui's. I'm sorry, all my analogies are either food or film. And he was saying that, when you are portraying a negative character, you can't believe you're evil. You are doing what is your right.
Exactly.
So
Exactly,
that makes
exactly.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
I always try and find in any theme or given situation some kind of practical takeaway. Now, also, what one hears very often is from families of these individuals who get recruited, who get brainwashed. कि हमें तो पता ही नहीं लगा, हमें तो भनक भी नहीं मिली, we had absolutely no inkling that this is what is going on, and then there's an indoctrination going on. Uh, 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 do you think, what do you think about that? Do you think that's possible?
I think that's possible or might not be because we live in a society where that there are very vast generational gaps. My parents might know what society I live in, even though we live in the same society. So I think that does make sense sometimes because in the areas of terror, I think, for example, let's not talk about terror, let's talk about general things. For example, if a young adult is, indulging himself into a risky behavior, for him, it'll look cool for him. He will indulge it because my friends are indulging into these risky behaviors. So that's the pathway they choose. Their parents might not be aware about it. So I think it's a very gray area between these things.
What I also find very intriguing and interesting is another nuance of this same thing is that I mean, it makes perfectly logical sense that to that individual, he or she is not doing anything wrong, but
Exactly.
yet there seems to be this much consciousness कि वो उसे बिल्कुल हर व्यक्ति से कंसील्ड रखते हैं. And I
Definitely,
find that to
definitely.
be a contradiction of sorts. So either, so I mean, it makes no sense, right? That if you feel that you're doing this absolutely wonderful thing, in a lot of cases, God's work, and you're so proud of it and you're so positive and enthusiastic about it, why would you go out of your way to keep it hidden? So
True.
there are complex, I think,
Yeah, definitely.
facets at play here. Um, you had also mentioned role of ideology and identity. Talk a little bit about those.
See, I think the role of ideologies, the manipulation comes within the community which these people are growing in. For example, if I grow in this society, if I'm growing in Indian society, I would have these ideals for me. If I want to become a dancer, I would idealize some great dancer for me, right? In these community, which this is just my opinion, that for these communities particularly, the ideal person which you want to become are themselves the terrorists. So आप बचपन से वही चीजें देख के
Hmm,
ग्रो
hmm,
कर रहे हो.
hmm,
For
hmm.
you, that's the hero figure. you
Correct.
know so you'll automatically be keened to that. And if that person is living in that same society, of course the people nearby will of course pretend that he is the hero for us. you know he's taking stand for us, or he's praying for justice for us. So automatically that child, that inner child, वो बचपन से जो छोटा बच्चा है उसके लिए that guy is the hero. So I don't think that affects the young adult mind that much to even rationalize these things.
Very quickly before we wrap up, and I know you need to run, I'm going to ask you a very controversial question. It's an important question, but please, please tell me quite plainly that you don't want to answer it, and I'll simply not include it in the episode.
I'll try.
I want to try to understand. It makes sense when we talk about uh, trying to sort of interpret the mindset of a terrorist, the kinds of motivations and influences that make them do these certain things and develop their entire belief system around their work. When you have a nation like Pakistan, and neither you or I are history students, but where this seems to be so systemic in that it's not just the quote unquote terrorists, but for years and generations again, this is almost functioning like a rogue state where the alleged powers that be, whether it's the political establishment or the military establishment, is fully complicit and leading these kinds of endeavors. What does that even mean? I mean, does that mean that something very, very severely happened and went wrong that fractured the mindset of an entire people?
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. I mean, we can understand this that in a way that how do you seek to prevent terrorism now? There is the you we all know that there is terrorism around you. Now, how you gonna, as an individual, as a civilian, how you gonna prevent it? When we talk about these ideologies and these extremist radical behavior which people are still doing, for example, the Pahalgam attack, the motive behind was just very simple. The motive was to show, or to give the message to outsiders, or show this resistance to Indian government that non-Kashmiris should not be allowed here. That's the only motive they had, you know, but they have to go to the extremes of it. And I think personally, I of course don't know much about history as well, but what I believe in, that these deep-rooted things come from generations and generational traumas, if you say, keep, even when we talk about Indian society, कि एक राजा है, उसके बच्चे ने उसका बदला लिया, वो चीजें हमने भी इंडियन सोसाइटी में देखी हैं. These people, the Kashmiris or the Pakistanis, the Pak Kashmiri area, these people are still belonging to that society where they're still seeking for justice. So I think for generation to generation, they keep passing this so much instead of making sense to it, sit with it, find solutions. They keep passing it, you know, and that does make sense because at the end of the day, I mean, terror is everywhere, you know. When we talk about terrorism, it's a very big term, but the criminal mindset works in every society nowadays. For example, this Pahalgam thing happened in Kashmir, and another day I saw this news where in UP there was this vegetable vendor, वो सब्जी बेच रहा है, and this guy comes, he's like, क्या क्या आप कौन सी जात के हो, है ना? And he just breaks everything. So I think terror is deep rootedly in each one of us. Each one of us. It's when we talk about psychology, uh, when we talk about the personality pyramid, when we talk about the id ego, super ego, so these people does have the strong id ego, which boosts them to follow these criminal instincts. But at the same time, I think we all have them, but we know how to balance them. But they don't, because they have motives behind it. They have strong motives. They have strong traumas. They have strong revenge to take.
Yeah, that's a perfectly sound explanation. Of course, each of these aspects can spin into an unending conversation in itself.
Yeah, definitely.
The fact that we have so much history that is steeped in a
Definitely.
designed
Which we are
caste
not aware,
system.
which we are not even aware
Yeah,
about,
absolutely. So
you
there
know.
are so many things. Finally, ऐसा कुछ, is it even possible that there are certain things that people, families can do to, I won't say ensure and safeguard, but even slightly mitigate the chances of young people in their families falling prey to this kind of poaching and indoctrination? वो क्या एक दो चीजें हैं? Is it validation? Is it to do with attachment? What might those two three very simple things be that parents and grandparents can do in homes to make sure that, or at least to try and make sure that their children don't fall prey to this?
See, I think that comes not just with the family, but it comes from a very socio-cultural perspective because an individual grows from family, from friends, from
Sure.
individual, or from the daily people he meets. So I think as a family, the early education about, the basic religion biases which we make.
Hmm.
I think even I know a lot of my friends which will go like, no, this is another
Hmm.
caste.
Hmm.
So I think that deep-rooted thing should be monitored,
Hmm.
should be understood more broadly. Ki, where is the root of it? What is the root of it? Just because now when we talk about the roots of it, trust me, we nobody is aware about it.
Hmm.
But the roots will go back to the लड़ाई जब हुई थी, जब partition हुआ था, जब
Correct.
traumas generate हुए थे.
Hmm.
Now just imagine me being in this generation. I don't know उस time पे क्या हुआ था, but
Right.
still that link is so deep rooted
Yes,
in me
yes,
that I'm
yes.
still ongoing with it. So I think this early education about these critical thinking, having empathy, you know, social inclusions of people like job dignity, representation,
Hmm.
stronger mental health support. For
Hmm.
example, in the say art community, the people can talk more about rational things, not fall in hatred more,
Hmm.
use good transition of storytelling via movies or
Hmm.
art or
Hmm.
culture,
Hmm.
and what else we can do? De-radicalize the programs.
Hmm.
जो बहुत I think Delhi University or these universities have these such very vast, broad programs.
Yeah.
They can be soothed down a bit.
Yeah.
And most of all, I think revolving media sensationalism around
Hmm.
us
Of
and
course.
glorification of this fear. Because I recently saw this news where these two couples were like, Pahalgam mein attack hua hai, but this is not us. That was another couple.
Absolutely. No,
So
I
this
mean, see,
glorification
you
of
are
fear.
making very, very critical points, but we need to understand that there's probably, very few of these areas that we have any kind of control over in a micro sense. I can't do anything about the media. You can't do anything about the media, but I can
Definitely.
certainly do something to create a certain kind of environment and dispense a certain kind of ideology and education to, for example, my daughter.
See, I'll tell you a very short my childhood story where we used to live in this area जहाँ पे अब like हमारे घर के पीछे there was a proper Muslim community, and my family used to be so familiar with this environment that I was born in it.
Mm.
We used to play together. My dadi used to take me to वो झाड़ा लगवाने
Mm,
when I
mm,
used to
mm,
get sick, and I
mm.
used to get better as well.
Mm.
That was just the faith.
Mm,
I do understand that, but
mm.
when later when I moved out, grow older, I realized कि अच्छा, there is this hatred behind society around it. So I think family can teach these ये जो biases which we create based on religion, they should be neglected.
Absolutely. I mean,
As
they
a
should be
child,
completely
yeah,
dismantled by example.
definitely, definitely. And I'm very thankful to my family that that I've grown to that environment and that space. I recently went to Kashmir last year,
Oh, I was
and
just
I
going to
have a
mention that
friend.
myself if you didn't bring it up. And
Yeah,
hence, you found yourself in
yeah.
Kashmir alone.
Definitely. I went to Kashmir alone and it was an amazing experience. The driver was amazing, the people were amazing, the vendors were amazing. They were so friendly. And I even have a friend who's a localite Kashmiri Muslim. I stayed with their family. The fact which I hated or questioned a lot there was the fear the people have who are living there. The Kashmiri Muslims, they have this. But me as a tourist, I am not fearful. I'm pretty much protected. But them, the people who are living there, have this such strong fear. For example, I was out with my friends and I was like, Uncle, I'll come back by 7 o'clock. He got super panicking. He's like, no, nahi, nahi, अंधेरा हो गया अब.
Mm,
He gets
mm.
super panic about these things कि अंधेरा होते ही घर आना है. They're
Right.
absolutely all the time living in this terror, which the terror exactly which we used to stay in the COVID days. वो उस टेरर में एवरी डे रह रहे हैं, which is not a good thing, which is very terrifying for a young adult to grow in the society. And my friend was like, you know what? We don't want Pakistan to take us. We don't want India to take us. We want Kashmir for us. ये छोड़ दो हमें हमारे हाल पे छोड़ दो. That's what they want.
Absolutely. No, that's a lovely story. And, in fact, so many of us have so many stories related to Kashmir that
Definitely.
it really demonstrates how significant of a place and people and geography that has been in many of our lives. I mean, so for
Definitely.
me, every summer in a huge group from the family, we used to go and pretty much camp in Gulmarg. And
True.
those were some of the most unforgettable times of my life.
Definitely.
So it's all I can say, and to conclude on a slightly sort of hopeful and positive note, is the solidarity that has been shown by the locals that you just now referred to, by them coming out
Definitely.
on the streets, and
Definitely.
this counter narrative that the entire country has presented to what was attempted in terms of
Definitely.
religious division. So, yeah, it's been an extremely interesting, important, and insightful conversation. Thank you very much. It's always a
Thank you so much.
pleasure, and take care.
Thank you so much for having me, sir.